That's fine, that's the shoe that I
Welcome
want.
to this Cardinal Mindszenty Foundation program in honor of the 50th anniversary of our namesake's death in 1975. We're very proud to host the St. Louis visit of our two distinguished speakers from Hungary on a 4-city U.S. tour sponsored by the Hungarian government. I'm going to call on Kurt Prenzler, Executive Director of Phyllis Schlafly Eagles, which is our co-host in this building, to introduce Balint Bakundi.
Very good. Well, on behalf of the Phyllis Schlafly Center and the Phyllis Schlafly Eagles, I want to thank everyone for showing up. We have a great crowd. And I particularly want to thank Clara Schwartz, who made the pastries this evening. We're very delighted to celebrate this event in the history, and we thank all of you for coming out to really celebrate this important person and important event. So I want to turn it over now to Balint, the council from Chicago.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us as we remember Cardinal Mindszenty, one of the most courageous defenders of faith and freedom in the 20th century. Cardinal Mindszenty was born in 1892 in Hungary, the very same year Ellis Island opened its doors to immigrants into the United States. While millions crossed the ocean to seek a new life here, Mindszenty remained in his homeland, where his vocation as a priest and later as a bishop would place him on the forefront of history. He lived through both world wars, the rise of the most evil dictatorships of the 20th century, fascism and communism. He was imprisoned by the Hungarian Nazi Party, the Aerocross Party, tortured by the communists, and spent 15 years as a refugee in the US Embassy in Budapest during the Cold War. Yet through all this, he never abandoned his faith, his people, or his belief in the dignity of human persons. Mindszenty's story is not only a Hungarian one, but also an American. His life runs parallel to the great chapters of American history, both world wars and the Cold War, and it reminds us of the deep ties between our nations in the fight for freedom. After the Cardinal was allowed to leave the US Embassy walls in Budapest, he did not stop proclaiming his faith and love for his country. He visited many Hungarian communities across the free world. He made visits from Venezuela to Great Britain, from Switzerland to South Africa, and from Cleveland to here in St. Louis. During his travels, he arrived to the city on June 20th, 1974, where he celebrated 2 masses at the St. Mary of Victory's Catholic Church and another one at the St. Louis Cathedral. He visited the Mindszenty Foundation, blessed the statue of Mother Mary, and at the Mindszenty Foundation, he openly criticized the Hungarian Communist Party and told the audience how he felt Hungary was a great defender of Europe and how many Hungarians have felt let down after the World War. At the cathedral, he said, and I quote, "I did not feel forgotten. I constantly felt the thoughts and prayers of understanding of faithful people. I'm also grateful that when the persecution became severe, America welcomed all segments of people and gave them a home, a second homeland for all this time. Thank you. The Hungarian nation and I will never forget this to the American people." His words still echo today, 54 years after he left the US Embassy and 50 years after his death. We gather to remember him in the new chapter of the Hungarian-American diplomatic relations. It is now my honor to introduce our keynote speaker for tonight, Mr. Mark Erzegi, Special Advisor for Religion and Diplomacy at Hungary's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Mr. Erzegi studied at the University of Trieste and at Pázmány Péter University of Hungary. Mr. Erzegi joined the Hungarian Diplomatic Service in 2001, and since then he held several positions related to international religious affairs and at the Vatican. He served in Rome and on the Holy See. During this time, he became widely recognized as a Vatican specialist and a commentator on church diplomacy. He is the author of the book Pope, Holy See, Vatican, which explores the institutional, legal, and theological aspects of Vatican diplomacy. Mr. Erzegi has written extensively on church-state relations, canon law, and Hungarian religious history. He is also a frequent guest on Catholic and public broadcasting programming, including Hungarian TV news agencies' report on the Vatican affairs. We will begin with Mr. Erzegi giving his opening remarks and then transition into a fireside conversation where I'll guide our discussion by asking Mark and Liza a series of questions about Cardinal Mindszenty's life, his witness, and his relevance for us today. After our conversation, we are happy to open up for questions that you might have into you or share a testament of Cardinal Mindszenty if you had the honor to personally meet him as well. Mark, the floor is all yours.
Thank you indeed, or would you like to proceed?
You have the floor.
I have the
I
floor.
should have mentioned first that Balint Bakondi is the Deputy Chief of Mission of the Chicago Consulate of Hungary. And you went to college at Purdue.
Sure
right?
did.
Got a degree there.
Thank you, Balint, for the introduction, and thank you all for this warm welcome, because this was what I immediately felt when I entered this beautiful building and got to meet you, that there is a warm welcome and friendship. So I'm deeply honored to be among friends. In an environment that is determined by the Cardinal Mindszenty Foundation and the family of Phyllis Schlafly and her legacy. And this is very good for us Hungarians to feel that we have friends also far away from Hungary, here in the United States, not only among Hungarians but also among Americans. And I think Phyllis Schlafly and her family are great friends of Hungary since the 1950s, as I understand. And that's, I think, a miracle, a true miracle. And given the fact that they dedicated their work to the person of Cardinal Mindszenty, we can put it on the count of Cardinal Mindszenty, kind of a miracle of him to have to gather such a beautiful friendship and a beautiful company in order to promote those values and those that story that he was also devoted to. That is Christianity, human dignity, democracy, if you like, but all based on those values that are proper to Christianity, stemming from Christian faith. And indeed, why I am here speaking to you this evening, I am not a historian, neither I'm a theologian. So my approach to Cardinal Mindszenty is that of a diplomat. Who deals with religion and diplomacy, religion's role in foreign policy, in international life. And indeed, that's a very important issue to deal with and to remember the witness of those great personalities who devoted their life to advance the cause of our shared values, not only in their own country but also at the international level. And because religion, faith, and all the values that stem from that can help us and can help our nations to strengthen our friendship and make new friendship. And anyway, for diplomats, what is the most important thing? To advance the cause of peace, to make new friends, and of course to understand the world. And religion is part of the world, is really a fact, as we can simply say. And we cannot understand how things are going throughout the world if we don't understand the role of religion. And here comes the example of Cardinal Mindszenty, and this is why I accepted to come to the United States, to all these cities of the Midwest, to St. Louis, to speak about him. But instead of giving a lecture, to celebrate together with you, because the 50th anniversary of his death, which for saints, and he was indeed a saint, it means a birth to heaven, a birth to a new life of a saint. We have to keep the memory alive. It is good for us to celebrate this memory together, and I think based upon his life's example and legacy, we can build our beautiful friendship between America and Hungary, growing stronger also nowadays. Nowadays that we really have a new chapter also in our bilateral relationship between Hungary and the United States, and I think that we really need those foundational principles that tie us together, and Cardinal Mindszenty is certainly one of them. So this is the reason why we thought it was a good idea to celebrate together with the Cardinal Mindszenty Foundation here in St. Louis, where also Cardinal Mindszenty have been, and it is really also a tribute to the Cardinal Mindszenty Foundation, who took up this idea and devoted its whole activity since 1958, if I remember well.
Correct.
To all these ideas that Cardinal Mindszenty represented as a beacon of faith and hope, and everything that is against the dictatorship of communism and atheism. So I'm deeply honored to be here this evening, and looking forward to this conversation with all of you.
Thank you, Mark. So I wanted to begin where all things begin, at the beginning of a story. Cardinal Mindszenty was born in Hungary, and then he chooses the vocation of priesthood. Is there anything in particular that the two of you would like to share about his early life, his early priesthood, that later becomes significant in his struggles to keep his faith?
Maybe.
You know much more than I do, Mark.
Yeah, indeed. I think this is an important aspect, because we remember always Cardinal Mindszenty in prison or in the exile, or as a public figure who fights for liberty and for freedom of religion, for faith. But of course, a great part of his life was devoted to a very concrete Christian community. He served as a parish priest. He was the parish priest of Erzegi. It's quite easy to pronounce this name. It's a capital of a county, of a province in Budapest, in Hungary, in western Hungary, and he was nominated parish priest over there. It was the county where he himself was born, and quite young he became parish of this capital city of 20,000-30,000 inhabitants, Catholics, mostly Catholics. So it was quite unusual. And he took it quite seriously, and during his pastoral work over there, he made all those experiences upon which he could build later his public ministry, also as a bishop, as Archbishop of Primate of Hungary, as a cardinal, because he had to care for a concrete community right after the First World War. The First World War was in itself a tragedy, but for Hungarians, the aftermath of the First World War was an even bigger tragedy, with poverty, with revolutions. Did you know that in 1919 there was a short-lived communist experience in Hungary? So Hungarian communists took over the power and did a few months of terror, and they imprisoned later Cardinal Mindszenty as well. So his first experience of communism was he had it already as a young priest. he understood what is it about to have communists and when they take powers. It was really a lucky thing that they did not kill him. It is only in these years that we started to honor and to rediscover the example of many priests who had been killed by the communists in those few months of 1919 in Hungary. It's a less known story, but I think also that is part of the story of Mindszenty, of why he chose to act like he acted, because he understood what is it about all this game. So he was a parish priest in Zalaegerszeg, where his ministry was very modern for those times, socially sensitive, a great builder of community, of institutions, trying to enhance the cultural and the social life of the faithful entrusted to him. He founded a Catholic newspaper. That was always a big issue in Hungary, to have proper Catholic press. He was creating social institutions in that city. He built also new churches, founded new parishes, and he understood and always confessed that faith is not a private thing, is not something that you shall have only on Sundays or at your home, but faith shall inform all your life, and therefore it has a public relevance. So he was one of the actors of the public life of Zalaegerszeg in those lives, in cooperation, of course, with the mayor and with the public authorities. And when things were getting worse, because as the Second World War was approaching, there were quite sad tendencies in Hungary, especially with the German influence getting stronger. What did he do? He changed his surname, because he was not Mindszenty from his birth. He was called Pém. Pém is a German name, okay. And when it started to be an advantage to have a German-sounding name, he wanted to change his name to a Hungarian name to protest against this politics. Because what was this politics about? For example, discriminating other minorities, Jews, for example. What did Mindszenty do? He demonstrated publicly his friendship to the local rabbi, okay, going against the laws that were already discriminating the Jews in Hungary. And also later, when he was nominated Bishop of Veszprém in 1944, he publicly protested with some other bishops of Hungary against the deportation of the Jews. And he was imprisoned for the second time in his life. So the Hungarian Nazis deported him and imprisoned him for a few months. He experienced also the other atheist dictatorship, that is Nazism. Okay, that was also a very important experience in his life. And when he was freed, and when the World War was over, he found himself in the middle of the ruins that the war left in Hungary. And what did he do? He saw that it was the time of the German minority to be discriminated against. After the Second World War, there was the Allied powers did a decision, or at least allowed, that the various governments of the Central Eastern European countries just deport the Germans because a perceived collective guilt for the Second World War. So also from Hungary, great part of the German minority who was living there for centuries and which contributed a great amount to the development of Hungary, were deported to Germany. And he was one of the bishops, a few bishops, who protested publicly against this inhumane act of deporting the Germans. So he sided always with those who were discriminated, who were in danger. So he was a very tough person who did not hide from difficulties. He was very present in public life. Why? He was not a politician, and he probably wanted not to be a politician, but he understood that faith has a relevance for public life, for society as a whole. Therefore, he has a responsibility as a Christian, as a bishop. Later, when he was nominated Primate of Hungary, he, in 1945, so 80 years ago, we celebrate in these days of early October the 80th anniversary of his nomination to Archbishop of Esztergom. So he understood and took seriously his role stemming from this from this ministry, his public pastoral role of being a bishop and Primate of Hungary. Why Primate of Hungary was important, and I close this chapter, because you know the Catholic Church is built up from dioceses, archdioceses, but in some countries, especially in Europe, we have certain historically developed roles that were called the primates, who had an overseeing role over a certain country's other bishops. And in Hungary, since the Middle Ages, the Archbishop of Esztergom was also the Primate of Hungary. It meant he had some liturgical privileges, he had some jurisdiction over the other bishops, like could convocate a national council of bishops. He had his own ecclesiastical court, and he had also the presidency of the Bishops' Conference. Okay, ex jure. Later in the 1990s it was changed to be an elective role, but in those times the Primate of Hungary was naturally the president of the Bishops' Conference. And he historically also had a very important role, the Archbishop of Esztergom. He had the right and the duty to crown the King of Hungary, the Apostolic King of Hungary. And the crowning a king, especially in Hungary, was a liturgic, not only a liturgical, but a religious act. The Holy Crown of Hungary, the crown of St. Stephen, is itself a relic, and it embodies the independence and the continuity of the Hungarian state. This is why also nowadays Hungary has on its coat of arms the Holy Crown, because it represents the state, which is a continuity, which has its continuity since the times of St. Stephen, not because we were a monarchy. We are indeed a republic. And for Cardinal Mindszenty, monarchy and this link to the kingdom and the King of Hungary was also part of his vocation. So when he was against the changes that were occurring in Hungary after the Second World War, he was not a backwardist. He was not a person in the past who wanted to bring back the politics of the past, but simply he considered himself one of the last columns and fortresses of the traditional Hungary that wanted to resist communism that was taking over Hungary.
I would like to jump in for just to clarify a couple of things you said. Even though Mindszenty's surname was Payne, which sounds German,
Yeah.
I think he considered his family Hungarian for hundreds of years, and Hungarian was his first language. And so he didn't consider himself German, and when he was speaking up for the German minority, it wasn't that he considered himself part of a German minority, I don't think. Right?
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
You are right.
And
absolutely.
also, his full title for a while was Prince Primate, and that was a special constitutional function in Hungary.
Well, Prince Primate, the part of the prince, it was an interesting additional title to the primate. So the Primate of Hungary had a constitutional role that I highlighted of being one of the most important public figure of the monarchy the Kingdom of Hungary, having the right to crown the king. And of course the bishops, all the bishops, and of course the primate, had their seat in the upper house of the parliament. Okay, like in Great Britain they had, and maybe in some other countries. Actually, the Hungarian constitutional system and the British has many things in common, like the Magna Carta in England from 1215 and the Golden Bull of 1222 in Hungary had more or less the same issues embodied in itself. So it's an interesting thing. So the bishops were of course sitting in the parliament. So of course he had a constitutional role as well. What does it mean, prince primate? It was an additional title that was given to the Archbishop of Esztergom in the 18th century. Because the emperor, who was also the ruler of Hungary, awarded this title of Prince of the Holy Roman Empire to the Archbishop of Esztergom. So it belonged not to his Hungarian duties, but it was an additional title that refers to, it was a honorary title of the Holy Roman Empire. You must know that Hungary was never part of the Holy Roman Empire, even though he was ruled by the emperors, but not as emperors, but as kings of Hungary. So it was a complicated constitutional situation. But when the emperors did not respect Hungarian specificities, Hungary's autonomy, Hungary's constitutional identity, as we would say nowadays, Hungarians always did rebel also to the emperors. Okay, that was important. So that was Prince Primate was a secular title added to him, and of course he kept. And when in the 1950s, if I remember well, it was maybe Pope Pius XII who issued an instruction for the pastors, church leaders, not to use secular titles. Okay, because also in Germany, in Austria, there were these secular titles added to that were used for historical reasons by certain bishops. Then also Mindszenty ceased to use that title. So he voluntarily dropped the title of Prince Primate of Hungary, used only the Primate of Hungary. So when he visited St. Louis, he was Primate of Hungary. That is the correct title, I think. That is a very important thing to clarify.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Mark, you already kind of touched upon this, but he is targeted throughout the dictatorships of Hungary, both the Nazis and the communists. Yeah. Is he targeted as more so as a faith leader or as a community leader? And why him? Why not other members of the church, or why is he targeted in this way?
Well, you must know that the church in Hungary gave a lot of martyrs during communism. So
Martyrs.
Martyrs,
Right.
yeah. Mm-hmm. He was not himself the only one who was targeted by the communists, of course. The communists targeted everyone who was outstanding personality and witness of faith, who were dealing with, especially with the youth. Okay, they were allergic to priests and pastors being popular with the young people. Okay, because the young people were the next generation, the future, and the communists wanted to grab the future. Okay, they wanted to erase the past and to grab the future. So church leaders were embodying the past and working for future, so it was natural that communists wanted to erase them. Actually, you must know that when Mindszenty had also an auxiliary bishop, Zoltán Meszlényi, who was a great canonist in Hungary, and he was also arrested. After Mindszenty's arrest, he was also arrested. Okay, and he indeed died in prison. He indeed died in prison in 1953. For years he was in prison and suffered a lot, so he was left to dying in prison. And he was already beatified some years ago, so the auxiliary bishop of Mindszenty is already at the honor of the altars. And some other priests also suffered a terrible fate, and it is only nowadays that we go forward with the beatification process of all these church figures who gave their life for the cause of Christian faith and for the people of Hungary, which was tied in some way.
And we'd very much like to hear about the beatification process.
Oh
for
yes,
Mindszenty.
yes indeed.
Yes.
Well, just let me recall that 3 weeks ago or something like that, nearly a month ago, we celebrated in Hungary, in Veszprém, the beatification process of a young girl, Magdolna or Magdi Bódi. She was killed by a Russian, a Soviet soldier who wanted to violate her, wanted to abuse her, as a lot of women were abused in those times. And she consecrated her life. She was not a nun. She was a worker girl. Okay. Someone whom the communists might have thought that workers were with the communists. Okay. No, she was not. She was a deeply Christian young girl who made a vow of chastity, offered her life to Christ, and she defended not only her life but her vow of chastity, of being dedicated to Christ, and therefore this Soviet soldier killed her. But through this sacrifice of her life, she saved a lot of other people who were hiding in the same building, who were safe and were not harmed. And only now we had the beatification of her, a new example for young people in Hungary. And it's also a very interesting thing that the place of the martyrdom of her is now in the courtyard of a Protestant school, and they really honor her. The monument is kept by this Protestant community over there, because we in Hungary too understand that martyrdom unites the various Christian denominations, and we witnessed it especially during communism. And indeed, Mindszenty was nominated bishop just a year before the martyrdom of Magdi Bódi. And as soon as he was released from the Nazi prison and learned about the martyrdom of this young girl, Mindszenty immediately started to collect the witnesses and started the beatification process. But of course, he could not conclude it. And when the communists took power, you could not even speak about someone having been killed by a Soviet soldier. Okay, so it was about to forget, but people do not forget. Okay, it comes out, and now she is also at the honor of the altars. Just this last Saturday, we had another beatification. This time in Transcarpathia, which is Ukraine. A Greek Catholic priest of Ruthenian Hungarian origins, who was born in Hungary but was ministering in what was then the Soviet Union, the Transcarpathian part of the Soviet Union, and was killed by the Soviets also in 1953. So he was ministering for years in a hidden way, and they discovered him, and at the end of the day they killed him, and they have hidden his body beneath the garage of the police. Okay, so it was hidden for decades, where his body even was hiding. He was beatified now. He's also an important martyr of that oppression of Soviet communism, and also a link between our people, the Ruthenians, Ukrainians, and Hungarians. So this is the period where we have all this beatification, and Mindszenty is, of course, in his way to the altars. And I think the beatification of Cardinal Mindszenty would be of great importance because he's a symbol of all these people who gave their lives, who suffered a lot for their faith against Soviet oppression, against communist dictatorship, and his elevation to the honor of the altars would be kind of a crowning of all this process of remembrance, I think. And it is therefore why Hungarians expect most his beatification, which is underway. I can explain it if you need it.
Before you explain it, I just want to mention that unfortunately in recent weeks we've had a lot of talk of martyrdom in the United States since the shocking assassination of Charlie Kirk. And Charlie Kirk was not a Catholic, but he was certainly a Christian, and our most senior Archbishop in the United States, Cardinal Dolan of New York City, promptly declared that Charlie Kirk was a saint. And but yeah, martyrs have there have been so many martyrs in the history of the church, and Catholics like to talk about a dry martyrdom in the case of Mindszenty, because he was not precisely killed for his faith, but he certainly suffered a lot for it.
Yes, indeed, and you're right to recall that Mindszenty was a dry martyr. The communists were very proud. They did not want to martyr him because they knew that martyrs have a power, an additional power, and the Catholic Church will honor him, and so it would be a loss for them. So they did not want to kill him. This was why they sentenced him for life imprisonment, not to death. And they did not let him die in prison, because that would have been a danger for them. And this is why we have the procedural difficulty of not having the beatification process for a martyr, which is faster, but a beatification process for a confessor, which is more complicated, has more evaluation and investigations, and you need a miracle, okay, which is a requirement for the beatification indeed.
Martyrs have a faster route to sainthood than non-martyrs, and since Mindszenty was technically not a martyr, it's a more complicated process, which you can tell us about.
Yes, indeed. It's somewhat more complicated, but I can say that some years ago, it was, in 2019, the Hungarian Cardinal Mindszenty Foundation, which is the promoter of the cause of beatification, which is keeping the memory and the legacy and the inheritance of Cardinal Mindszenty in Hungary. They donated a small secondary relic to Pope Francis, okay, a piece of vestment of Cardinal Mindszenty. They presented, I was also present there, during an audience to Pope Francis, and Pope Francis immediately recognized, and oh yes, Mindszenty was a martyr. Okay, he declared it clearly. Unfortunately, he did not sign the beatification decree, but we understood that he really understood and considered him as a martyr. And of course, there are different kinds of martyr. Technically speaking, for church regulation, he is a confessor, and we'll go through, and we are certain that he will go through this process. This process started, I think, right after the death of Cardinal Mindszenty. And here I must commend the Catholics here in the United States, especially the Hungarian community, because right after the death of Cardinal Mindszenty 50 years ago, they started to collect the witnesses and the memories here in the United States and everywhere in the world, while in Hungary that was not really possible. So the first documentation came also from the United States. Mindszenty was, as you know, first buried in Mariazell in Austria, because he died in Vienna, and of course he could not be brought back to Hungary, so he was like he found 15 years of temporary refuge in the American embassy in Budapest, he found 16 years of temporary burial in Mariazell. And in 1991, when the Soviet soldiers evacuated Hungary, so Hungary was really free again, his remains were brought back to Hungary and buried in the crypt of the Basilica of Esztergom, so the primatial basilica. And after this, the beatification process could formally start. It was 1994 that the beatification process started. The first 2-3 years were the so-called diocesan phase of the beatification process, of collecting all the writings, all the memories, the testimonies, the witnesses to be heard and put together a vast documentation. And this documentation was, of course, translated into Italian and went the whole material to the Vatican, where the competent office of the Holy See, the Congregation for the Causes of Saints, examined it. It took some 20 years. And they put together the proper documentation, the so-called positio, examined by historians, examined by theologians. At the end of the day, it was, of course, reviewed by the cardinals and bishops of this Congregation for the Causes of Saints, and they approved. They declared. Their vote was absolutely. I think it was unequivoc that Cardinal Mindszenty was a person that the Church should present as an example for the Church nowadays, for the faithful nowadays. Technically speaking, that he lived the virtues of faith, hope, and charity in a heroic manner. So Pope Francis in 2019, the 12th of February, issued the proper decree attesting the heroic virtues of Cardinal Mindszenty. That is really the antechamber of the beatification, the last step before the beatification. And since then, we can venerate him as a venerable. He was awarded with the title of Venerable. So, Venerable Servant of God, Cardinal József Mindszenty. This is the phase where the beatification process is now standing. What we need now? A miracle. Okay, because technically speaking, a miracle is needed.
We need one or two.
For the beatification, we need at least one. But
another one for
a proper, and then later another one for the sainthood. But a proper miracle, okay? It is not that we do not have miracles or prayers that have been answered through his intercession. The Mindszenty Foundation in Budapest has a lot of witnesses. They receive a lot of letters and testimonies of this kind of events. But you know, for Vatican regulations, you have to have properly documented. Normally, it is a medically examined healing, supernaturally not explainable healing process. And for the moment, we failed to present one miracle that could fit those categories. I remember the miracle, the healing that was presented to the Vatican for this process was a case of a miraculous healing. But there is a regulation that it could be considered for the beatification process if that person survives at least 5 years, okay, after the miraculous healing. And in this case, it did not reach the 5 years, unfortunately. Maybe that person died from other causes, but technically speaking, it was not acceptable. Okay, so technically, we are now looking for the properly documented another miracle, and therefore, it is an important thing for all those who believe in the sainthood of Mindszenty and who wish to have him granted the honor of the altars, to pray for the beatification and to ask for his intercession in difficult cases. So the Mindszenty Foundation in Budapest is promoting the prayer and the novenas for this cause. And I can say that, and it is also a very important witness of the global relevance of Cardinal Mindszenty, that as you honor him here in St. Louis and in the United States, some other people honor him in other parts of the world. For example, in Palau, which is a small island in the Pacific Ocean, there is a high school named after Mindszenty. It has been named in 1949. So the students there are studying the life and legacy of Cardinal Mindszenty, even if they probably don't know where Hungary itself is, and probably will never travel to Hungary, but they know that Mindszenty was important for the church globally. And also an important development that we have even people in Nigeria who are praying for the beatification of Mindszenty. Actually, Hungary is funding a lot of projects in Nigeria for church-related institutions, and there is also a hospital and a school for nurses, which is funded by Hungary through a special program called Hungary Helps. And Hungarian doctors, Catholic doctors, visit often this place, and they introduced the veneration of Cardinal Mindszenty in Nigeria. And we have the Nigerian nuns and the Nigerian nurses praying for Mindszenty and praying, asking his intercession. Who knows whether the proper miracle will come from Nigeria? That would be really a very significant aspect, because, as you might know, where is nowadays that we have the most Christian martyrs nowadays? It is Nigeria. Okay, that's another chapter we can talk about later this evening. That Mindszenty's legacy is important not only for historical reasons, but for its present importance, its present relevance, because we shall not forget that persecution of the church still exists nowadays.
Yes. Well, explain to the people in this room who might want to see Cardinal Mindszenty beatified how they could possibly help. If they were to pray for Mindszenty's intercession to get themselves or someone else through a dreadful illness, and
yes,
that person survived for 5 years, then to whom would they apply to provide this evidence?
Okay, so the Hungarian Mindszenty Foundation, which prepared also this small exhibition that we brought to you, has a homepage also in English, and there you will find some prayers. And they are keen to receive the news and the information about possible miracles or simply prayers that have been answered. So you will find on that homepage also the official prayer for the beatification of Cardinal Mindszenty and some additional prayers asking his intervention, and you can find the information related to possible healings to the Mindszenty Foundation. Of course, it is important when you pray for someone who is dreadful ill and you ask for his or her healing, then it is important to keep the records. Okay, at least keep the records, have the proper documentation, and the official investigation will then require them, will examine them, and after 5 years, if it is all right, will be considered. Okay, this is the technical procedure. The most important is to pray. And the Mindszenty Foundation in Budapest has this official role of promoting the beatification process.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing is for the beatification and sainthood, we would really need miracle. So if anybody came here today with a Mindszenty miracle in their back pocket, please do let us know. We'll get you connected to the right people.
We have a minor miracle. It's not health related.
Great.
Embarrassed my wife by letting her tell the story. So right after he was became a venerable.
Well, Joe O'Toole, who owned Fields Foods, I had been praying that if Cardinal Mindszenty would become a saint, then our church, because we were going to lose our priest, that our church could stay opened. And
St. Mary of Victories.
St. Mary of Victories, which is the Hungarian
Yes.
church, and because he came to our church and offered mass, so the altar itself is like a relic where he offered mass, and so for sure they would not close us, because he would have been a saint who came there. So I was praying for that, and because he had such a devotion to Our Lady, he loved the Blessed Mother, and he even wrote the book about the Mother and loved all mothers, and so I just felt like I needed to pray to him, and I didn't even, know that that they were trying to consider him a venerable at that time. I was just praying, and after Valentine's Day, Joe O'Toole said, "Oh, we accidentally over-ordered the roses for Valentine's Day. Would you like them?" And so we said sure. And when they announced it, that following Sunday, our whole sanctuary was filled with red and white, like roses. And I thought red for a cardinal, and the little white flowers because it was a white martyrdom. So I just felt like it was a congratulations for his being declared a venerable. And I thought of St. Elizabeth of Hungary, who we have an altar to, and she had the miracle of the roses, and I thought we had the Mindszenty miracle of the roses. So that's I really believe that, and I was so thrilled. So
No, it's
Just kind of hit us,
Such
the
amazing.
roses were there and then it was announced,
yeah.
That's awesome.
Very
It's
interesting.
more than a coincidence,
Yes,
because we
it
don't
was.
believe in coincidence, we believe in miracles. Thank you for sharing it. And you could eventually also write it down and share it with the Mindszenty Foundation. Thank you for sharing it.
I also wanted to ask the both of you, Cardinal Mindszenty obviously have quite an important role in Hungarian-American relationship, not just because he's freed in the 1956 revolution by the Hungarians who stood up to an empire, and then subsequently Cardinal Mindszenty flees to the U.S. Embassy in Budapest. I wanted to ask, the first part is, what does he do in the embassy? How is he treated? We had honor yesterday in Chicago to honor Patrick Flood, who was the liaison diplomat for Cardinal Mindszenty at the embassy in Budapest. His daughter came and said a few words in our event yesterday. And then what is the greater meaning? Because he travels to the US, he comes here to St. Louis, he goes to Chicago. What does he do? How is he welcomed by the Hungarians?
Okay, so actually, when on the 4th of November 1956, when the Hungarian freedom fight was being crushed by the Soviet army, he found refuge in the American embassy in Budapest, which is standing on Szabadság tér, Liberty Square. What a name, a symbolical name. So he was granted refuge on a humanitarian basis. Of course, it was not a sudden decision, as recent historical investigation showed, but it was something that was already agreed at least some hours before, or maybe it was even suggested with the agreement of the White House, but surely with the Department of State. So it was something officially agreed. But the United States did not grant him political asylum, because it would have had a different meaning on a political level, but a humanitarian refuge. And he was staying in the embassy building for 15 years, 15 long years, living in the ambassador's office, celebrating Mass in a table, on the ambassador's table. And that table exists. That table you will find in one of the memorial places of Mindszenty that I can mention later. So he was living there, and it was an important presence. It was not so common to have a cardinal living in an embassy building, of course. So the embassy, the US embassy in Budapest, had to deal with the situation, and they instituted the role of the religious attaché. So a kind of a liaison officer who cared for Mindszenty, spoke with him, who did everything that was related with his presence at the embassy. And that was, for me personally, as a diplomat dealing with religion and diplomacy matters, I find it really a very nice thing that already at that time they realized that that was an important thing, and they cared for the religious part also of the presence of Cardinal Mindszenty in the embassy. And I just want to quote the witness of one of these US diplomats, who is Patrick Flood, the father of Pauline Zelkin, whom we met yesterday in Chicago. He was one of these liaison officers of the embassy dealing with Cardinal Mindszenty, and he wrote in a letter to some Hungarian researchers the following, and I'm quoting: "His Eminence spoke English fairly well and without hesitation, an extraordinary achievement in view of the fact that he taught himself the language with the help of records he had requested early in his stay, so that he could communicate with his hosts in our language without a translator, and celebrate Mass for Americans in English." Okay, so he definitely wanted to be close to the embassy staff and to minister them in their native language, in English. This was because he, of course, understood the importance of the use of your mother language in your prayer life. He was convinced that that could enhance your personal devotion, because your mother tongue, your national culture, your love for your country, for your homeland, is not something accidental. It's something very important also from a religious point of view. Okay, it's not the religious veneration of country and the distortion of religion that someone might think, and we have also examples for that, unfortunately. No, it was a very important concept, and I want to refer to Saint John Paul II, who wrote extensively about the rights of the nations, because he was convinced that nations, as a community of people bound together by language, culture, history, tradition, are something more than a simple legal assembly of people. And they, as a community, had rights. So human rights are not only individual, but they have a lot of community aspects. So nations have rights, and this is important because, as John Paul II said, the love for your homeland, in Latin patria, has something to do with the fourth commandment: honor your father and mother. Patria means in Latin the legacy of your fathers. Okay, that is not something fortuitous, something accidental, but something that God has given to you to honor and to cherish, not to abuse. And this was the same thing that Mindszenty considered important for himself, and loved his homeland, his patria. And this was the reason why he wanted not to abandon. This was the reason why he accepted to stay in the US Embassy in Budapest, not to leave possibly the country because he wanted to stay at least in Hungary in some way.
And he
But-
literally could not even walk out the door.
No,
of the embassy,
definitely.
or he would have been whisked away
Absolutely.
to a lifetime of miserable imprisonment again.
Absolutely, and that would have been a tragedy. But he did what he could, and since he understood the importance of Hungarian language for his people, he also recognized the importance of celebrating Mass in English for this American embassy staff. And his message, also when he came here in the United States later, was also related, especially directed to the Hungarian community. One of these messages was, keep your identity, keep your language alive, because that is a value, that is a treasure that God has given to you, and it is important for you to keep it because it enriches you. It might even help you to God.
Thank you. You already kind of mentioned this, Mark. If some of us would like to learn more about Cardinal Mindszenty, because obviously we are constrained by time a bit as well, if we were to visit, I don't know, Hungary, for example, where should we turn? Where can we learn more about Cardinal Mindszenty?
Of course, we have luckily many books written about his life, his achievements. There are his memories published in English. Also, recently it has been published with a new edition. His memories also in Hungary. It has been republished recently. So that's a fundamental reading, of course, if you want to know better Cardinal Mindszenty. And if you wish to make a personal pilgrimage on his footsteps, of course, starting with St. Louis and going through all these Hungarian-related places here in the Midwest and in other places in the United States where he visited, where he celebrated Holy Mass, and where his memory is kept alive. I was really moved in these days that I visited Cleveland, Detroit, Chicago, and now St. Louis, to see how much his memory is kept alive. A lot of objects and personal belongings and the whole memory of his stay here is kept alive. So I think the United States is very important in his for his memory, as a lot of memorial places are here. And if you wish to continue this personal pilgrimage to Hungary, which I of course recommend very much, you should of course visit first his tomb in Esztergom, in the crypt of the Primatial Cathedral. Just a few months after his reburial there, John Paul II, who visited Hungary for the first time in August 1991, the first thing he wanted to go was to pray at Cardinal Mindszenty's tomb. He really understood the importance of him. So Esztergom is very important. But if you stay in Budapest, of course, there is St. Stephen Basilica. There is the treasury of St. Stephen's Basilica with a lot of interesting things to see there. And there is also a section dedicated to Cardinal Mindszenty with especially liturgical objects related to his ministry. And in Budapest, of course, it was the place where he suffered, where he was imprisoned by communists. He was arrested on the second day of Christmas, which is Saint Stephen Protomartyr's feast,
Right.
so the first persecuted Christians feast. He was taken to Andrássy út 60. The Andrássy Street 60, that was called with this name, was the center of the communist secret police with torture chambers beneath the building. It was used also by the Nazis before, so it was really a horrible place. And in the early year 2000s, so some 55 years ago, that same building was transformed into a memorial museum, the House of Terror. The terror means the communist terror, because because Hungarians still remember that the secret police came and rang the bell and they took the people away. So it was living in a terror regime, especially in the first phase of communist dictatorship. So the House of Terror is a memorial place where you will also find memories of Mindszenty and of many other people who suffered and who died under Nazism and under communism. It's an important memorial place. Then you should go to the other place where he was imprisoned. It was in the 8th district, in the Conti Utca prison. He was staying from 1948 to 1955, so many years. And the square in front of that building now bears his name. There is a statue, a very nice statue of Cardinal Mindszenty right in front of that prison where he suffered a lot. And so this is how history gets its revenge, and a place of suffering becomes a place of memory and veneration for him. Actually, the same building still belongs to the police, so you can visit it with guided tours. The Hungarian Mindszenty Foundation offers regularly guided tours with the permission of the police, and you can visit those places where he was kept in captivity in those years, and where he received the visit of Padre Pio. Did you know about it? Padre Pio was known for bilocation miracles, and there is a witness written down by one of the disciples of Padre Pio, that he went to visit Cardinal Mindszenty while he was imprisoned there. Okay, and he brought with him all the materials necessary for celebrating Mass, because Mindszenty was deprived of the possibility of celebrating Mass, and of course that was an additional suffering for him. And Padre Pio went through this miraculous way to celebrate with him, and then went back to San Giovanni Rotondo. And you will, and this is not a legend, but it is really accounted in the life of Padre Pio, and it is also featured in the sanctuary, in the new sanctuary that has been built for Padre Pio in San Giovanni Rotondo. There's a new modern church, and there are a lot of mosaics, and one of them shows this really episode. So the 8th district is relevant also for that. Reason. Indeed, in that statue, I was told that in that statue, standing in front of his former prison, it has been placed a small relic of Padre Pio, remembering this interesting episode, miraculous episode. And the most important thing, I think, is that in Zalaegerszeg, where he ministered as a parish priest for 25 years, and his pastoral ministry was in full, 2 years ago it was inaugurated a new museum for him, the Mindszenteum. And there is a permanent exhibition about his life and ministry with a lot of personal belongings that all belong to the Hungarian Cardinal Mindszenty Foundation, and it is put on exhibition in this Mindszenteum museum. You will find a lot of memories from his American trips as well. You will find the keys of all the cities that he visited, and he was presented as a homage with the key of the city. You will find a collection of American keys of the cities, and you will find there the table upon which he celebrated Mass in the American Embassy. So it's a very important place. You will find another exhibition about the other priests and ecclesial people suffering during communism. So Zalaegerszeg is a very important place of his memory, and you should visit it when coming to Hungary. And not far from Zalaegerszeg, there is of course his birthplace in Erzegi Mindszenty, from which he took his name. And his former home is also a memorial house. So you have all these places to visit in Hungary, and I highly recommend to you.
I think it's important to note that Mindszenty continued to speak and write against communism for the rest of his life, right? And when he toured Europe and the United States and Canada, he continued to tell the world how bad communism is. And he was, he became well known in the United States because he was on the cover of Time magazine in the late 1940s in connection with his show trial by the communists.
Definitely, and of course his witness was not mainly a political witness, but it was a witness of faith. And this is why it was a powerful political argument as well, because he knew what communism is in reality and how much suffering it is causing.
And how
Because-
anti-religion
because it is-
yes.
Because it is anti-religion, and if it's anti-religion, it is inhuman. Okay, that was his saying. And he felt that it was an important thing to have, to present his witness to the world. This is why he wrote his memories. And this is
His memoirs.
memoirs, yeah.
Yes.
And why he wanted absolutely to publish the memoirs abroad, because of course in Hungary he could not. But that was an important issue, why at the end of the day he agreed to leave the US Embassy in Budapest, because he saw that the possibility to publish the memoirs was only if he went abroad, and he could do this publishing work. And it was here in the United States and in other countries, in other languages, that they published his memoirs, and it really became a bestseller because it really opened the eyes upon the reality of communism and upon the suffering of Hungarians, and of course with them and with many other peoples under communist dictatorship.
And unfortunately, communism is still out there. I mean, in a number of countries in the world, and we have communist political candidates and office holders in the United States.
This is why it is relevant also nowadays, because as I said, we are not having a historical lecture on, I'm not a historian, but it is important to recall his example, his witness, because what he fought against, communism and atheist ideas, maybe change their name, change their approach, but not their essence, and they can be still present also in our Western democratic world. And therefore it is important to recall his example and his witness, and what he told when he was accused of being anti-democratic and not agreeing of Hungary being a democratic country after the Second World War. He said, and I think that's very important also nowadays, let's fight for democracy, but without forgetting about man in the meantime. Okay, so democracy not as an ideology, but something that serves man and human dignity. That was his political credo, I think, and I think it's quite very, very timely also nowadays, when ideas that are against God, against the God-given nature of man, are also taking place and trying to win over what we believe and what the churches represent is still over there. So his witness is not something related to the past, but something very timely also nowadays.
Talking about witness of faith, I would like to highlight that the Hungarian government works with persecuted Christians, and Mark is on the forefront of that. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to tell us a bit more about the Hungary Helps program.
Well, right, because we Hungarians remember what is persecution of Christians. The generation of my father or my grandparents witnessed it personally. They knew martyrs eventually. So we are still on the way of preserving the memory of these martyrs, of the beatification of these martyrs of Christian persecution. So we understand maybe more closely and better what does it mean when Christian communities are persecuted, violently oppressed by dictatorships, authoritarian regimes, or targeted by extremists, violent extremism, which is happening in many countries in the world. So when we realized this, especially in 2016, when it was in Syria and Iraq, this ISIS thing of Islamic extremism was reigning and trying to exterminate Christians from those lands, the government of Hungary realized that it was important to speak about this phenomenon, that Christians are targeted and being persecuted there, because no other government was doing that, and to do something. We Hungarians are not the biggest nation in the world with limited economic and financial capabilities, but from a Christian moral perspective, it does not mean that we cannot do something. And if we can do something, we shall do something. And that was the basic idea that prompted the government of Hungary to start a program, a humanitarian and development aid program called Hungary Helps, because it's easier to understand, with a special focus on persecuted Christians. So my boss, who is a state secretary working at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, has written on his business card, State Secretary for the Aid of Persecuted Christians. Okay, that's a very courageous thing to go, especially in certain Western countries, and say that we are doing this thing, not in an exclusive and discriminatory manner against other religions, but with a special focus on Christians. Why? Because Christians are the most persecuted religion in the world. We heard it recently also from President Trump. We have realized it some years ago, and this is why we specialized our aid program on the persecuted Christian communities, not just individuals. So our aim is not to save individual persons, which is very important, and many organizations, even countries, are saving individuals who are imprisoned for their faith and conscience, and so on and so on. But Hungary specialized its aid policy in preserving Christian communities. Well, as I said to you before, human rights have a community aspect as well. And we Hungarians know why faith is important for a community's survival and identity. And this is why we want to help Christian communities to survive and to remain in their places of origin. So we reach out directly to church communities, to patriarchs, bishops, parishes, or religious orders, and asking what do you need, and try to address the concrete needs. That can be small-scale projects, and indeed we don't have too much money, but we can address some small-scale projects that make the difference. Because often these smaller communities don't need mega projects that could not be carried out, but they need concrete things to do. I often recall the first of this kind of aid. You might have heard about the Coptic martyrs in Libya 10 years ago only. The Prime Minister Viktor Orban traveled a couple of months after their martyrdom to Egypt, and reached out to the families of these martyrs through the Coptic Church and asked, can we do anything for you? And they said, we lost the breadwinner of the family. How can we survive? And what do you need? What can be of help to you? Well, we would need some sewing machines or cows. Okay, because that helps. And Hungary did finance cows and sewing machines for the families of the Coptic martyrs in Libya. This is the methodology that we follow, not to put up big projects that could not eventually reach the concrete people and the concrete community, but trying to help in a concrete manner that they think that is relevant for them, building schools, restoring churches, creating job opportunities, granting specialized scholarship for Christian people coming to Hungary with the obligation to go back and serve their community over there in their countries of origin. So this is what Hungary Helps program is about. And the origin and the idea of this, of course, relates to the memory of Cardinal Mindszenty and of other martyrs, because we remember how is it when Christians are targeted because of their faith, because of their identity, and how it is important to help these communities to preserve, to persevere among the persecution. So this is why Hungary specialized itself on this cause, and this is also why we consider it very important to keep the memory of Cardinal Mindszenty alive also in other countries, and we are grateful for the Cardinal Mindszenty Foundation that is I'm sure an ally in this word of keeping the memory of Cardinal Mindszenty alive here in the United States.
Thank you, Mark. I would like to close off with asking the both of you this final question. What is the final message that we can all carry in today's world and in today's environment that Cardinal Mindszenty is sending us 50 years after his death?
I defer to you, Mark. You tell us.
I would quote Mindszenty himself, okay, because that's the best thing, I think. He wrote a message right before his death to the Hungarians in America. And he made some remarks and recommendations that I think are the most useful and most important message of him to us nowadays. I quote, "The deep crisis of the Church today should not frighten us. Every individual and every generation of all the nations should struggle for their faith, like Jacob did with the angel of God, because God is young. The future is his. He can call forth the new, the young, and the tomorrow in the individuals and nations. Therefore, there is no room for despair." This is my testament to those I have met who have heard of me or who have avoided me. Let's put aside competition, excessive personal ambition. Without looking to the right or to the left, everyone should do their part where life has placed them. Let us create a church community built on Christian faith. Let there be children in the families, according to God's will. This is a blessing and the future, no matter what the world says. I think this is important also nowadays in our own lives. And if a cardinal who has been in prison for so many years, enduring torture, and then confined into seemingly inactive life, says that there is no room for despair because God is young and the future is in God's hand, then I think we can draw strength from these words and we can go forward spreading this message and living it, first of all, in our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
That's a great message.
Yes, thank you. And as promised, it is now your turn to ask a couple of questions or tell your personal stories of Cardinal Mindszenty. You're welcome to.
I just want to see if we could put that quote in the Mindszenty newsletter. Music's
You're
beautiful.
talking about the quote about mothers?
The one he just read.
Oh, that quote. Oh, great
We
idea.
share. We share it. We
Yes, I will.
It's a great message.
share. Thank you.
I would like to talk to you something about the teaching level of the memory
Yeah.
of Cardinal Mindszenty. I'm born in 1946. My mother is Mildred Mindszenty personnel. And I born in a very little village. And the Dunapatai, and another city is Kalocha. Kalocha has the big church, I don't know what rank we have on Kalocha.
Yeah, it's a cathedral dedicated to
Cathedral,
the
yes, yes.
Assumption of the
Yes.
Virgin.
From Dunapatai to Kalocha, the whole people from the village walking to Kalocha together, praying and going to hear Mindszenty humility. And my mother says he was very nice voice, strong, and then very hard, very nice to understanding in Hungarian language to the poor people. And then it was singing very nicely and a very beautiful voice to the public. And then my mother is just amazing how this high rank of priest is express the love to the people.
Oh, what a lovely memory.
It was a very nice story when his mommy is told us many times.
And I think Mindszenty did a lot of addressing enormous crowds in Hungary
Yes.
on special occasions.
Yes.
You know, outside.
This is a very important thing, and thank you for sharing, because what did Mindszenty do? When in 1947 he participated to a Mariological Congress in Ottawa, he realized he got a good idea. He went back to Hungary. Actually, this trip to Ottawa was his first trip to America, and he did not travel much abroad before that. He went back to Hungary and proclaimed a holy year dedicated to the Blessed Virgin Mary, 47-48, so the year before he was arrested, okay? And he went throughout the country to Kalocha and to other places to lead, as primate of Hungary, the faithful in devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary. And I think that was a historical act, because that contributed so much to strengthen the faith of the people the last minute before communism struck in. And I'm sure, and I think people of faith can be convinced of that this event, these prayers, this preaching tour of Cardinal Mindszenty had contributed to the strength of the Hungarian faithful not to lose their faith during communist dictatorship. So it was a key for the survival of faith in Hungary. And thank you for sharing these family memories, because that was the moment indeed that helped to survive.
Witnesses, he was alive there, and I have the hearing my mother's voice when I remember on this one. He is here.
Definitely.
Yes, because we are remember on the he was on the world.
Definitely. Thank you.
Do you have any other questions? Yes.
I really like the enthusiasm in your speech. Yeah, I could picture it in my head.
Very kind of you. Thank you, Marlene.
Good.
We can be enthusiasts when we understand the enthusiasm of others, and I think we can draw strength studying their lives and their words, and I recommend to you to do the same.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I know that while he was being in prison, that the communists tortured Cardinal Mindszenty. What I'm wondering is that when this was happening, did the communists try to keep that a secret because it would only make the people more angry against them? Or did they want the people to know about it and maybe even describe some of the tortures in order to frighten people from opposing them publicly?
That's a good question. No, the communists did not want to create a martyr. They wanted to portray him as a criminal. Okay, they put up a show trial and they convicted him to life imprisonment because of financial abuse and treason. He who was faithful to his nation so much until death was accused of treason against the people of
And
Hungary.
he was just a criminal.
Yeah.
He's not an anti-communist.
Yes, indeed. So it was not known what happened to him in the Andrássy Street prison. Only later, when he published his memoirs.
He exposed it.
Yes. And so they did not want the others to know what happened over there, of course. And it was not a... But they wanted to portray him as a criminal. But there is an interesting episode, and I think that's very also moving and helping to understand us the strength of the power of prayer. When he was arrested on the second day of Christmas, his seminarians started to pray for his release, and they went on for 2 weeks, day and night, in shifts, to praying continuously for Cardinal Mindszenty. And they desisted after 2 weeks because, of course, nothing happened, and they had to return to normal life. And only decades later, they did realize, and they received the news, they understood that 2 weeks were the crucial period of Mindszenty's life. It was in those 2 weeks that he had to endure the tortures in the communist prisons. And he could not have survived, probably, if not sustained by the power of prayer of his seminarians praying for him in those 2 weeks. Okay, so we go on praying and no answer, no results we see, but maybe some decades later we will understand what the fruits of those prayers are. I think this is a very important witness, and thank you for asking this, because that we could realize, but only later.
You seminarians can take a lesson from that story. We have a couple of seminarians
awesome.
from
Welcome.
Concordia. It's a Lutheran seminary,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
Yeah. Well, it's getting late. Oh, do you have another question? One more. Last one.
Kind of I guess, a nerdy scholarly question, if I may, but for those who know about Tökös László
Yes.
And his role in helping resist against communist oppression in Erzegi, which is known as Romania to most, I was wondering if there's any work done on Tökös having any inspiration from Mindszenty in any of his work.
That's a good question. I am not personally aware whether Tökös was considering or not the example of Mindszenty. Of course, the example of Mindszenty was well known. But in Transylvania, in Erdély, there was also Márton Áron, Bishop Áron Márton, who was a bishop of Transylvania and who had a similar fate, was imprisoned by the communists. He was then released and was kept semi-prison in his own palace for many years, and had to endure a similar fate. So he had at least that example. But I think we can say that all these church people had something in common, which I would like to quote, because someone other formulated it very well. He was speaking about mostly the Catholics, but I think the same can be applied to other faith communities in Hungary. The greatest members of the Hungarian Church constitute a reference for Hungarians not only in matters of faith. The great Hungarian Catholic Church leaders were not only at the forefront of preaching the gospel, but also served Hungary with their guidance and actions, both in their lives and in their deaths. I think this can be applied also to Bishop László Tőkés, and I quoted here the words of Prime Minister Viktor Orban when he inaugurated the Mindszenty Museum in Zalaegerszeg. And Viktor Orban is a great friend to László Tőkés, exactly because of his role in the fight for freedom and for the nation, for Hungarians, that occurred when communism was about to fall in Romania too. So I think that's a very, very good question. This is the line that links together Mindszenty with other church leaders in Hungary.
Well, I think that's a beautiful closing. Thank you so much all for coming. I would just... I would just like to say a quick thank you for Consul General Balázs Martonfi for allowing me to prep for this in the past couple of weeks. Also a big thank you to the embassy for producing these roll-ups, which we have put a couple out in front for your viewing. And then also thank you for the foundations for having us and being an awesome co-host and organizer in this event. Thank you so much for the both of you.
We appreciate your making the trip, and I invite all of you to stick around and eat some more food and coffee and whatever you'd like, and maybe visit with the speakers a little more. Okay, so this will conclude the program, but feel free to hang around and eat
Have
and
some
have
Venerable.
fellowship.
It's great. The Venerable is great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Claro Neni. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your attention. Thank you indeed.